Hi, my name's Haas. I'm the Regional Vice President for Anaplan.
And I'm Andries van den Berg, Anaplan Alliance Leader for Deloitte Africa.
So, Andries, we're here today to talk a little bit about the challenges that organizations are facing in Africa. I'm privileged to be able to sit here with you at Deloitte, but I'm really interested in hearing your view in terms of what are you experiencing as Deloitte in today's complex macroeconomic environment and the challenges that organizations are facing.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. I think CFOs really have an interesting challenge in Africa, seeing that we are seeing a remarkable amount of change being flung at them from all different angles. And traditionally, if you live in an Excel world, you sit with a situation where you get a black swan event, and then you ask your teams to go through a process of whipping up a scenario of what that impact of that change is going to have in your organization. Now, what we've seen is finance departments only have the capacity to really focus on a detailed plan once a year, usually the annual budget. And when these events occur, they find it very difficult to do a plan at the level of detail, at the right amount of speed that they can actually react to it. And generally what happens is they'll spend so much effort to almost like think about this problem that they've been presented, that by the time that they get to a answer, it's outdated. They already have a new challenge that's ahead of them. So what this actually results in is very high level plans that take a great amount of effort without the time and effort to actually analyze what those numbers tell them and what opportunity it presents them. And that is a massive problem for CFOs out there. And we've also seen that these scenarios that they come up with are very difficult to keep track of when they're actually starting to run through the business, because it's very difficult to actually tie actual numbers to these plans if you're living in an Excel world. So I think a big, interesting challenge for CFOs that they really don't know how to address. And I think your organization has done quite a detailed study around this particular topic, and I believe that's decision excellence. Do you want to maybe share something of that study?
Yeah, sure. I mean, Andries, it's great that you're experiencing the same challenges here in Africa that I think organizations around the world are facing the same. Historically, what we've seen, the trend was CFO's role is all about compliance, and so they're putting processes and policies and technologies in place for them to be compliant and be able to present, back to their shareholders. But as you've rightly said, the world is changing so quickly. More and more importance is being placed on an organization's ability to make decisions quickly and set a foundation within their platform that enables this decision making. And so we went out and we did a research study across 10,000 senior executives across the US, UK, and Canada, really focusing on what is decision excellence and trying to unpack that, and what is the quantifiable, tangible value of making an excellent decision. And that also led to a term called enterprise connectedness, which in effect is an organization's ability to connect its decisions to its operations. If we just take a step back in terms of answer the question, what is decision excellence? What impact does that have on total shareholder value? In effect, we found three things in terms of decision excellence ultimately is an organization's ability to make fast, informed, and effective decisions. I mean, that sounds pretty simple, but what is that? So when you look at decision excellence, it's basically made up of three constituent parts. The first one is the quality of decision made. So are decisions data informed? So are they backed by data and an underlying business case? The second piece is it perspective backed? So do you have the ability to model different perspectives to come out with what is the optimum decision to be made? And third, and importantly, is it acted upon? So are you actually acting upon the decisions that are made within an organization? The second piece was around velocity of decision. So is that made firstly at the right level? Is there an environment in which employees understand where and how what decisions they can actually make? Is it focused on what matters? So organizations or executives have a very clear view on what is important to them within that organization. And then the last piece is there a clear pathway to how that decision was actually made? And then, of course, we look at time spent making decisions. So productivity of those decisions, how much time we're spending in meetings, actually talking about decisions that need to be made. And then the last piece is just how effective were those decisions ultimately within the organization. And through the survey, what we found was the level of connectedness within an organization. So the more connected your organization is, so taking your decisions all the way through to your operations, the higher quality or the more confidence in the decision that you could make, or the more confident you were rather in the decisions that you were making. And that has a positive outcome in terms of total shareholder value. We have the full study and report, which we can share, but net, the headline is the more connected your organization, bringing information into one place, you can see it. Because you can see it, you can model and do all sorts of interesting things with that information, model what-if scenarios. That produces a much higher quality confidence in the decisions that are made. Because you're making confident decisions, you're able to start now driving competitive advantage in the market. And that leads to positive financial outcomes. So for example, just the ability to react quickly can drive almost 2% increase in EBITDA. And we're unlocking huge capacity for finance teams, so 20 to 40% capacity, because they're not drowning in this Excel nightmare that you described. And of course, when you take that, the bigger impact is on what impact do these confident, excellent decisions make in total shareholder return. And what we found was the difference between the winners in this study, the people that had started this connected planning journey ultimately, and the laggards, was about 14%. When you translate that into market cap, it's about $10 billion gap in terms of total shareholder return. And so as the world is going through everything that it's going through, shifting from just focusing on compliance to actually enabling your organization to set the foundation for effective decision making has a massive positive impact on the organization as a whole.
No, that's wonderful. I think I always like to connect it to like a real world example and then maybe to test this. In a mining example, I know that in the Excel world, I've been with mines that took 6 months to do their budget and another 6 months to do their long range plan. So effectively, they're planning all year long.
Yeah.
And in this scenario where we bring a more connected world, you could actually drive, as that mine plan gets formalized, you could then feed into HR, stores, maintenance, capex, everything that's variable in its nature can then be costed out in the flick of a button, rather than a flurry of emails and Excel models that flow throughout the organization. And I think that can then allow a year-long planning process to be a number of weeks and not months. And I think that's where the real value sits.
Yeah, I remember we, a couple of months ago, our chief strategy officer at our annual kickoff, there was a slide that came from a professor from the Harvard Business School, Nitin Nora, if I'm not mistaken. And effectively it said that the CEO's job is not to make every decision in the company, but rather to facilitate or create an environment in which decisions can be made effectively.
Yes.
And that, I think, is the secret sauce in terms of how organizations are, again, coming back to being agile, and it's a bit of a buzzword, but I think in today's world, you have to be agile if you're going to stay ahead. So you can't afford to plan for a year. You just can't afford it.
And I think we often speak about this as well, is that if you really want to make planning real, you can't just show it in rands and cents or dollars and cents, whichever currency you want to. You need to actually speak to planning in its functional terms that people can live and breathe. So if you are in HR, then we need to talk FTEs, headcounts, skills planning. If you're sitting in a stores environment, we need to talk about material prices, number of units. So every one of those functional areas needs to have the ability to be able to live and breathe a functional area of excellence, but also plan in that way. And ultimately that will translate into a rands and cents view that the CFO can check for whether it's at the right levels. But when you go down to the detail plans, you can say, well, let's look at the number of FTEs in this particular band, for instance. So I think that's where, as we say, the secret sauce of planning is to bring not only vertically but also horizontally.
Absolutely.
Bring plans together.
I'd add to that. There's also an external planning element as well, external connectedness. So I think about planning in 3 different lenses. You have your vertical connectedness, so strategic plans all the way down to operational execution. You have your operational connectedness, so connecting the value chain. So you could take that from supply chain, operations, finance, HR, probably underlying IT. And then, of course, external connectedness, which is bringing in suppliers, customers, macroeconomic events, and that sort of data. And when you start to bring all of that connectedness together, you get a connectedness index. And then coming back to the research, the more connected that organization, the higher your connectedness index, the higher quality decision you're able to make, the better you're able to plan, run different scenarios that, to your point, has a financial impact and benefit to that organization. But you're right, it's not just about rands and cents sitting here in South Africa. It's about, in essence, equipping the organization to make those decisions. And you and I, in our roles, are very clear on the decisions that we can make. But I'm clear, taking that a step further, I'm clear if I make a decision here in a leadership role, what impact might that have on my finance team? Is marketing going to understand the impact of HR's decision? And you can only do that when you get to this I suppose it's a bit of a nirvana around connectedness. But the good news, and why I'm so excited about our relationship with Deloitte, is you guys have been doing this for years and years, and you're Anaplan's global partner of the year for 10 years in a row. Yeah. And so I think there's a wonderful chemistry between what Deloitte brings and the thought leadership and the advisory and the consulting that you do and the experience that you have on the ground, married with, hopefully the type of technology that we can help bring in to organizations to solve these challenges.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%, because I think the ability to spin up proof of value in the Anaplan platform, coupled with the real world challenges that we are trying to solve, that is really where our relationship really shines, because clients can give us real world problems that we can spin up a solution very quickly to show them the extent of that problem and which levers can be pulled to actually make a difference to their organization. And as soon as we get that, we start them on that pathway to maturity in the planning space. And I think there's a better understanding these days at our clients that it's not an on-off switch. It's a path to maturity that can be plotted on a graph. And you don't have to go and solve the world's problem on day one, but you need to get started on that journey. And the best way to do that is to work in a platform that is designed to do this, with our functional skills to help them challenge their way of thinking, because the way that you plan in Excel might be the easiest at that time, but not the best for your organization. And if you want to survive as an organization, you need to make sure that their plans are credible and they can stand up to the challenges in the market.
Yeah, 100%. It's that journey from disconnected finance to, in this example, connected finance.
Yes.
And then to your point earlier, when you start to layer on HR, marketing, you start to get to beyond just connected finance, you become a connected enterprise. And that unlocks a whole exciting plethora of opportunity for organizations.
And I love telling customers that you are limited by imagination, but if you can draw it on a piece of paper, show it to us in a simple Excel model, we can make it happen.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a strength and weakness.
Yes.
Africa as a market is a place that is, filled with huge excitement or huge opportunity rather. And I'm excited about the potential of helping these organizations put a platform in place whereby they can make excellent decisions and I can't think of a better partner to do that with than Deloitte. I'm just uber excited about what we have ahead of us.
I totally agree, Andrew. We also look forward to making impact that matters in this market with Anaplan, and I think watch the space.